Hi and welcome to Scott's Inverts. I'm Scott, these are the Inverts, and today we're going to be having a look at our slings. In particular, these ones right here. These are what we normally get our slings delivered to us in, or in fact, they normally come wrapped in tissue inside one of these, and generally we keep our tiny slings in these types of pots. So in today's episode, we're going to have a look at these, keeping slings in these, and what we do, or rather what I do, to help try and keep our slings alive. Because for us hobbyists, there is nothing more satisfying than watching our tiny slings go from this size all the way up to adulthood. And from personal experience, if you raise a baby from tiny little fingernail size like this all the way up to an adult 6-inch leg span spider, it's so satisfying. And then if you carry on from that to actually breed them, it's just absolutely amazing. It's such an amazing feeling. But today we're going to be looking at the slings that are in these are what are known as sling pots. So if you mention sling pots to anybody, this is what normally springs to mind. But we've got the sling in there. How do we look after them? What do I do? Well, let's have a look. So we are looking at these guys right here. These are all our slings. I'll show you all these in another video, the bigger pots and what have you, but I want to try and concentrate on these ones first to show you guys what we do. So firstly, we're going to have a look at a typical terrestrial spider setup, and here we have a Hamori. You can see her just there doing absolutely brilliantly. She is completely fine in there. There's no issue. What we're looking at the moment is just depths of substrate. So because it's not an obligatory burrower, I've only filled that up halfway with substrate. That is completely fine. The substrate for all the slings, I keep it moist, keep it damp, around 70 to 80% humidity, but please don't get caught up on the humidity figures. As long as that substrate in there is damp, you are completely fine. And for this one just here has got a Chileobrachius discolus blue in it, and you can see the depth of substrate is like 3/4 of the way up. That is what I do for the obligatory burrowers, those that feel the need to burrow, and then they'll spend the rest of their lives burrowing. Again, that substrate there wants to be nice and moist, damp, not overly wet. Do not make it wet. Do not flood these out, whatever you do. And always push some air holes in the top. I'll use a pin to do that if they've not already got them in. So now we're going to have a look at the Boreal Species, and again, this is our Boreal Species. I don't with the tiny slings, I don't tend to put cork bark or anything in there for them to climb up, because they tend to burrow just underneath the surface. They will web up all up here where my finger is now, but that is completely fine. These guys are resilient. They're completely fine. Do not panic too much about them. Again, just show you this Vagans here. You see how it's created a burrow down the bottom? If they're down in a burrow like that, there she is there, look. Do not worry, do not panic. Don't go picking them up or trying to pull them out of their burrow or dig them up in any way. They're down there because they feel at the moment these guys are at the most vulnerable time of their life. Literally, these are so vulnerable at the moment. Hence, that's why they burrow down and hide away. Especially if they're filled, if their bellies are full, if they've had enough feed, they will definitely go down to the bottom. But just look at this one as well. I'll pull this one out for you. Boom, there he is. Look, a little OBT. That is absolutely perfect. Now, even these guys and the GBBs, I tend to keep the substrate moist. The substrate is always nice and damp. So for water, what we can do is we can get, have you seen those tiny little pipettes? Or if you've got children, you've normally got a syringe for the medicine. You can use anything like that, and all I do is pop the lid off and put a couple of droplets of water going down the side. That is enough. As long as that, like I said, as long as that substrate in there is damp, those 2 little droplets at the side going down there will be enough for your spider if it wants to, because they generally get all their moisture from their food at this size. It will actually go over and drink, which is pretty cool to see. As for feeding, what we can do for feed, if there are a tiny sling, let me just have a look if we've got one. That's a regalis, that one needs rehousing, but I'll show you that one in just a second. This one is tiny, but whether we can get it to come out, it's just there. So that is a tiny sling. So what I tend to do with those is put a couple of springtails in, let those guys munch those springtails, and then when they get a little bit bigger, when the abdomen's about the same size as a fruit fly, I'll put a fruit fly in there, and if it takes it within the next 24 hours, I know we're all good to go. Now, what's good to do is to get a fruit fly culture. This fruit fly culture, we're actually on the second, I call it a coming, I call this a second coming. So generally you get a fruit fly culture delivered to your door like this, and it all looks nice and fresh. There's casters all the way around the sides, and then within a couple of days it normally pops out to flies, and you can use a lot of those flies to go in those as feeders. But then if you leave some flies in there, what will happen is they will drop a load more maggots. Those maggots will come into casters, and then you get a second lot of flies, which is pretty cool. If you're in the UK, livefoodsforyou.co.uk, Scott's Inverts is your discount code there. Those guys do these. They're absolutely brilliant. But which kind of leads me on to something else, which we're going to talk about in just 1 second. But if your sling needs to eat food any bigger than what the smaller fruit flies are, then we need to be looking at going up to the next size of sling enclosure. What I generally do is, if you can see this guy here, that's an OBT just there. That guy's going to be alright in there for a couple more molts. They will molt a lot as tiny slings. This is completely fine, do not worry. My advice is, if the molt's on the top, try and get it out with a tiny pinpointed pair of tweezers, just to stop any mould or anything like that can possibly get in there. And also double check all your live food for mites before you put anything in here. Now, what I tend to do before I upgrade these, I wait for the spiderling to actually be a little bit smaller than the top of that there. So as soon as they're just literally coming up to being almost the same size as the lid, that's when you know it's time to change. It's time to move up to the next size enclosure, which we'll look at in a part 2. But today I really just wanted to cover these sling pots because we've all got them and we all use them. Now for feeding, as I've said, try and use those flies. I know they're not everybody's cup of tea, but you can soon get used to them. They don't fly around the house or anything like that. They are flightless, or they're supposed to be flightless, I should say, because sometimes you can get the odd one that does fly about, and that's why we have the sticky fly traps up on the ceiling in here. But how do we get these from here into there, into an enclosure without making an absolute mess? Well, it's dead simple. We get another sling pot, we get our fruit culture, and then we get this. We get an empty container like this, and it's so simple, you'd be surprised. All I do for this is, because if you can imagine that's your sling pot and you're trying to feed 1 or 2 into there, you're going to get tons that just miss and go all over the place. And if you've got a partner like mine and they come walking in and there's flies all over the place, you're in trouble. You're in big trouble. So what I tend to do is pour a few like that into the bottom of a container. So I've got some of the flies have gone in there. Just keep moving it around, otherwise they will climb up the sides. And when they start climbing up the sides, that's when they can get out. So just keep moving them around a little bit, and then do that, and then just pour them into a sling pot like that. There's no more in there. So once they're in this sling pot, we can then put the lid on it, and we've got all that live food literally ready to dispense out of a smaller pot. It's really, really easy. I'll just show you quickly on, I don't want to do it on the OBT because you know what will happen. On a hattie, and it's dead simple. If we know it's feeding on the flies, we can literally just pour 1 or 2 in, and that's it. Put the lid back on them both, and then we've eliminated, well, I say eliminated, we've stopped a lot of flies from escaping and not going in that pot. You're always going to lose 1 or 2. It's just the nature of the game. These guys are very, very fast. When you're trying to catch sort of 30, 40, 50, it's really, really difficult. But that's all I do. And if you look at that hattie just there, 1 more molt from that girl, and she's going to be ready for a enclosure upgrade. So I think we've just about covered everything. If you've got live food that's gone into your sling pot and it's died, just be mindful of what spider's in there, where it is, where it's living. So if it's on the top like this feather leg baboon here, you're going to have to kind of leave it in there for a little while until it starts to until that spider burrows down and it's out of the way. You can take the lid off for a minute, and you know that spider's not going to come flying out. That's when you can actually go in and remove that live food that's now dead in there. But yeah, that's how I keep mine. I find keeping the moisture levels up 70-80%, which is, like I said, don't get hung up on those figures. It is literally just keeping that substrate damp. And always remember to put the holes like that in the top of your enclosure as well, into the top of the lid. That's like a soft plastic, so it's easy. This is like a hard plastic, so it's quite difficult to put holes in without cracking it. But keep that substrate just moist, just damp, and that's absolutely perfect. I try and put 2 to 3 drops of water sort of down the edge where you know when you put water in and it just sits in a tiny little bubble. Try and do that on the edge, and try and do that twice a week. And then if she wants a drink, she can go and get one. I tend to feed my slings twice a week. You can do it 3 times a week. That's completely fine. Just be mindful of any live food that's going in that's not being eaten and passing away, and remember to get that right out. But like I said, this is part 1. We're going to bring out part 2 of sling care in another couple of weeks. But like I said, this part 1 literally has covered us from tiny slings up until a bit smaller than that lid, and then from that point we then progress to the next stage, so we go a bit bigger. And what I do is I put them in there for ever homes when they're sub-adults, and that's when they spend the rest of their lives, mainly in bioactive setups at the moment here. But yeah, that's what we do here. But like I said, it's just amazing. It's absolutely amazing when you've got such a tiny insect, and to watch them grow from this size all the way up to an adulthood. The males obviously do it a lot faster than what the females do. I'd say the fastest growing slings that I've had that go from sling to maturity have been OBTs. Those OBTs seem to go really fast. I know you're probably thinking I was going to say LP then, but LPs, they grow fast in size but not up to adult size. which takes a little bit longer, I think, than the OBTs. But bear in mind, your slings, depending on where they come from, well, depending on what genus they are, can take a long time. This is a Aphnopalma bicoloratum. It's about the same size as my little fingernail there, and it's 3 years old. So don't be panicking that your spider isn't growing as fast as you'd like it to. It's nature, it will grow as fast as it wants, and it's as simple as that. But yeah, that is sling care for these sling pots. And like I said, if you want to see where we go from there, then hang around, subscribe, hit your notification bell and all the rest of it, and we shall bring out part 2 in a couple of weeks. But are we going to the Newark show this Sunday? I am. I hope you guys are going to be there too. If you're on the channel, you know, and all the rest of it, then great. Come along, say hello to me, stop me, come and grab me. I will have channel stickers on me which I'm going to be giving out to those of you guys that want them. So just come along, come and say hi. I absolutely love chatting to you guys. It shows you are more important than looking at the inverts half the time, because the conversations I've had at invert shows with subscribers have been absolutely amazing. I mean, such an interesting bunch you guys are. It's unbelievable. But thank you so much for watching, and as always, we shall see you again on the next one.